MiVote Mackinac tonight is brought to you by ITC Holdings Corp., the Masco Corporation Foundation, DTE Energy Foundation, PVS Chemicals, World Asset Management, a Comerica company, Raymond, and by the Shirley and Bill Fox Fund.
Hi, I'm Christy McDonald, and thanks so much for joining us for MiVote Mackinac, the final wrap-up of a week filled with forward thinking about the future of Michigan. Business and community leaders, 1,700 of them, all here at the Detroit Regional Chamber's Mackinac Policy Conference for 3 days. The focus, the business climate in the state, incorporating STEM education, encouraging entrepreneurs, some politics here and there, and a focus on Detroit's comeback and the repeated message that what happens to the state's largest city affects us all. Coming up tonight, the focus on revitalizing our cities. Plus, Detroit's emergency manager Kevin Orr addressed the conference, a look at where Detroit's bankruptcy process is, and the next steps, what impact this gathering will have on the rest of the state. So let's get started tonight with Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson of the Detroit Free Press. Gentlemen, it's always good to see you and talk about the end of the week here on Mackinac Island. Today, a lot of focus on cities. We heard from Mayor Mitch Landrieu from New Orleans, and we also, you moderated a panel talking about really the next chapter and looking at the city of Detroit. A really big focus on Detroit this time around, especially this morning, Nolan.
Yeah, almost the entire conference was focused on Detroit, and there does seem to be a sense here that we need to unite beyond Detroit's borders and beyond even the region's borders, and the whole state has a stake in fixing this problem, and I think we're going to get it done.
So many times we've equated or taken a look at what's happening in New Orleans, Stephen, and compared our own disaster to what happened there in Detroit. What kind of parallels can we take or similarities can we take out of Mayor Landrieu's speech?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that you can look at in New Orleans is how they have recovered. I mean, they're ahead of us, right? What happened to them happened before we hit the bottom, and the difference between where they started and where they are now is pretty remarkable. What did they do? How did they work together? What kinds of things did they invest in that are helping to turn that city around? You know, you look at questions like blight, schools, all of those things they had to confront in a very similar way that we do, maybe a different scale. But all the same kind of problems.
What can we learn, Nolan?
Well, I would allow that Detroit, after decades of neglect, mismanagement, abandonment, is in worse shape than New Orleans was post-Katrina, and the federal government came in and poured billions, tens of billions of dollars into rehabbing and bringing back New Orleans. Detroit has had to fight and struggle for every dime it's gotten from the federal government, and this arguably is in as bad a shape as Katrina or as New Orleans was.
The White House, though, does have a liaison here in Detroit. It's been working, Don Graves, since September. What kind of help are we seeing from the administration?
Well, I mean, one is identifying resources that Detroit has not taken advantage of in the past, and that means not just money, but also capacity, you know, help doing some of the work here. That's one of our big problems, is that there's so much work to do and so few people qualified to do it, that they've been able to come in from Washington and identify resources that can help us there. The new technology officer who came here from Louisville was first identified by the White House as somebody we should be interested in. So they've been sort of all over the map in terms of trying to figure out ways that they can plug holes in the way that we run this place and try to rebuild it.
And pointing Detroit in the right direction, but still saying continuously, Nolan, that there is no bailout for Detroit here.
Well, no federal bailout,
right.
But you know, you can call it what you will. They are putting money in here they wouldn't have otherwise put in, and money that perhaps isn't going to other places. One of the problems is there's been a lack of confidence in Detroit's ability to spend dollars that come in here, and you know, I think this idea of public-private partnerships is starting to solve and resolve that issues. Don Graves, you mentioned him earlier, he was actually here on the island, and I hope he got a look at the commitment here and the willingness of people to do creative, innovative things to fix this problem.
We're going to talk a little bit more about that public-private partnership a little bit later on, but Detroit's emergency manager Kevin Orr gave a keynote address today. I sat down with Kevin last night for a look at what's next in Detroit's bankruptcy. You've had the House pass their part of the grand bargain.
Yes.
The Senate is going to pick it up
Yes.
right now. You had a chance to go to Lansing, and essentially you sat in front of them and said, we need your money.
Yeah.
Was that the money line that you think helped start to make the difference?
Well, you know, when you're going and asking for someone to make a courageous effort to help us with this effort, let's be direct. Let's not waste time, and let's talk about it. And quite frankly, I was very impressed with the level of interest, sort of the level of understanding. The questions were very sophisticated in their understanding, and, you know, the vote was tremendous. So we got a little bit of momentum.
This has been an unbelievable set of moving parts.
Right.
When you're talking about dealing with the unions, the pensioners, the other creditors, you're talking about dealing with the DIA,
Right.
foundations, and
Right.
putting this deal together. What has it been like to put together this deal, and could you have envisioned it happening this way even 8 months ago?
No. One of the things that's been so key is the efforts of the mediators led by Judge Rosen, which has really brought to the table this $816 million. You know, last year, this time I kept saying, you know, DIA Corporation, our owners, they have to find a solution. I kept staving off Christie's doing this. We came up with almost $1 billion. I hadn't anticipated that. The level of courage and effort by some of our labor counterparties, their leadership teams, in coming forward and reaching agreements that we're actually going to put forward to the voters, meaning the creditors, to go forward. The interest that we've had in some of our creditor cohorts, the unlimited tax general obligation bondholders, the swap settlement, which we thought was a good deal last year and was driven down to even a better deal this year. So, you know, it's been an eventful year. We're making a little bit of progress, but we have a long way to go.
I was just going to ask you, because the pensioners, they have to vote on this right
Yeah, they
now.
do. Yeah,
and
they
so do you caution people and say this is not a done deal when people feel that we're almost home free?
Absolutely. You know, Christy, we're coming into the third term. We've still got to, we're coming out of the third term, but we still got to go through the fourth term and that long straightaway to the finish line. Got a little bit of wind at our back, a little bit of momentum, but we have 3 major milestones. We've got to get through the Senate funding, which is not certain. I take nothing for granted, nothing. I don't take it for granted the sun's going to rise tomorrow, okay? We have to get through the planned voting for some of our labor constituencies, and actually there's been some effort by some people to undermine that process, and I have to tell them how dramatic, you know, we're talking about the difference between a cut that's somewhere between 5 and 20% and a cut that could be 60% where people are on the state rolls and are eating cat food, and then we've got to get through the confirmation hearing, which is by no means easy.
Undermine how? Tell me.
Yeah. Well, first with the vote, we're going to hopefully do the same thing we did at the House. We did some of that the past couple of weeks and explain both the value proposition for the city of Detroit, the value proposition for the state of Michigan, but also the risk element to the state of Michigan if we don't. I mean, just pushing, without this deal, you're pushing people onto the poverty rolls who'll come to the state for assistance in one form or another. So it's the old Fram oil filter commercial. You can pay me now or you can pay me later, and luckily the House decided they would like to pay now. On the planned vote, it's very complicated. I have to acknowledge that some of the retirees and employees are going through the ballot. My own staff has come up to me, members of my own staff have come up to me and said, you know, this is hard stuff. So, but we have to understand that at core, it's $816 million that goes away. And they're being hit by some of our creditors who are saying, sell the art, it'll yield X billion dollars. Well, I don't know if that's true, but even if it is, that X billion dollars isn't going to be allocated to pensions. That's going to be spread across the whole $12 billion unsecured creditor class. So it's actually less money to the pensioners if you were to do that. But they're trying to confuse them. They're trying to mislead them. And I have to tell them, don't be hoodwinked. Don't be bamboozled. And then the third thing is the confirmation hearing where some of these same counterparties, some of the bond insurers who are going to the financial press, I heard today, and saying Kevin Orr is undermining efforts in the market by not selling the art, are going to come to the confirmation hearing and say this is unfair. You know, you have to force the city to do it. It's directly contrary to Chapter 9 doctrine, where you cannot force a municipality to sell its assets, but that doesn't mean they're not going to try.
Talk to me a little bit about what's going to happen in July. You have hundreds of objections filed against the plan of adjustment.
Sure.
Walk people through the process, because again, a lot of people have never experienced a municipal bankruptcy like this before.
Right.
What can we expect to see this summer?
Well, you know, each case is different, and this certainly is unique. It's never been done in a number of inches, but we filed an omnibus objection, which has a summary on the back of it in the court filing, and it's on our website if people want to see it. An omnibus objection Tuesday, and we're going to have those objections litigated, that is, witness testimony given in court. I suspect that there'll be an opportunity for individual objectors who filed to come in and voice their concerns. There'll certainly be an opportunity for our financial opponents, and then there'll be an opportunity for us and our allies, if you will, the people who we've made deals with, to explain why this is important and what it means to their various constituencies for this to get done. And then ultimately the court Judge Rose has to make a decision as to whether or not it meets the requirements of Chapter 9 bankruptcy.
Do you believe that you can finish this process by the October deadline when the City Council can vote to have you out of this position? And if you cannot, would you stay on in some other kind of capacity that perhaps the governor could appoint you to?
Well, you know, I've never rolled off a job in my life, and this is certainly we've all. I mean, the number of parties that are here, both in the private side and the public side, have expended a lot of blood, toil, tears, and sweat to get us to this point. But, you know, I'm going to try to keep to the schedule that we have. As the court has said, anything can happen. That schedule should slip. I have to be respectful of that. I have to understand that. We're going to try to keep to it. And then when we get to that point to see where we are, you know, we'll address it then. But I certainly would like to think that we'll be in a position to be pretty darn close, if not done.
And Kevin Orr really spoke to a packed room today. I think a lot of people were very interested to hear what he had to say. And, you know, you don't often get to hear him talk at length about the bankruptcy process and what's going on, Nolan.
No, and I think that was a good one, too. You know, Duggan up yesterday, really rallying the crowd. And you can tell that he has won this audience over. They believe in him and his abilities. Then Kevin Orr comes up today and with the second part of the message, and he inspires confidence as well. And I think the combination of Duggan first, then Orr, really has to be a reassurance for potential investors in Detroit that there is some potential here.
You know, I thought it was very interesting too. Kevin Orr also joked around a little bit and then said, you know, when Mike Duggan fires me in a couple of months, and that is really the reality that City Council they can remove him at the end of his term, which is at the end of September, right?
Yeah. Well, what will be interesting
or
is,
not, right?
is to see, you know, where are we on the temporal sort of line with other things, right? Where is the bankruptcy when that deadline gets here? If we're not through it, does it make any sense at all for City Council to dismiss Kevin Orr, who has, you know, structured the whole thing and ridden herd on it, and try to bring somebody else in at the last minute? That hurts the city. And I actually think this council, which, you know, will be under enormous pressure to restore, you know, complete democratic control in Detroit, will probably look really closely at that.
Yes, at what cost and balance
right.
keeping on. And you know, I did ask Kevin about staying on beyond, and he does say he wants to finish the job, but they'll you know, make sure that try to get it by that deadline.
Anyway, there's no way the governor is going to let this a change in the leadership of this bankruptcy in the final stretch here. It may not be finished by September. There's plenty of loopholes in that emergency manager law that would allow the governor to skirt that council process, reappoint or for whatever time's necessary to finish the bankruptcy. You lose your bankruptcy attorneys and your sort of conductor of the bankruptcy at that critical moment. It delays this process. No telling how long.
It could just derail the whole package of. I mean, this is his brainchild.
He's making the promises. He's making the commitment.
And really, and if you take a look at where he is right now, I mean, this has been a staggering journey to this point, and the things that they've been trying to line up. But this is not a done deal.
It's gone remarkably well. When we were here last year, looking ahead,
there was
no bankruptcy
right.
last year, and he wasn't here at the Mackinac Policy Conference.
And remember what we predicted. This could be years, and it could, you know, whole departments could disappear.
Right.
Employees could lose their pensions entirely. This could cost, you know, billions of dollars. And it has been nowhere near those dire predictions. And that's largely thanks to the combination of skills of the governor and of Kevin Orr.
Well, and bringing in Orr, I mean, I've talked to the city manager in, I think, Stockton or Vallejo, one of the two cities in California, about their process and how different it was, because that city manager was the person who was trying to lead them through the bankruptcy, and that's somebody who had no experience, you know, as a bankruptcy attorney, had never seen this stuff before, and did not have the kind of powers, in fact, inside the city that Kevin Orr has had. And so bringing him in, which, you know, was a controversial move, and I think there are credible arguments on both sides about the suspension of democratic authority. But in the end, if that gets us to the place where we have gone through, you know, the largest municipal bankruptcy in history in just over a year, and reset our financials that way, I don't think there'll be any question about whether that was the right decision.
And when's the last time you saw people in the streets protesting in any numbers, howling? This, I mean, I think he's won the people of Detroit over. They're starting to see the tangible results of the service improvements he's putting in place. They're not there yet by a long shot, but people are seeing forward progress, and that's all Detroiters ever asked for, is to let's stop sliding back and start moving forward.
And I think in him speaking here at the policy conference too, you have the business leaders and community leaders who are watching this and saying, you know what, I'm buying into what's happening in Detroit in terms of when you start talking about investment money as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, after the bankruptcy, we still are going to need a tremendous amount of effort and work to be done in the city. The markets in the city don't work the way markets are supposed to work. That's about private investment and capital and infrastructure and things that we still have to build. Service delivery is still just getting back on its feet. Our schools are still a complete wreck, and we don't talk nearly enough because of the bankruptcy about what we're going to do with that issue.
And that has to be that next conversation, because if you're talking about getting people back into the neighborhoods and moving families back in, then you have to look at that school system.
And nobody really wants to have that conversation. I mean, Duggan,
because no one knows what to do.
Duggan is just now starting to come around to this idea that he needs to talk about it. He might need to lead on the issue. You recall when he was running for mayor and even after, well, that's not my problem, you know. And he's starting
to see. I think he's got almost too many other things to handle right about now.
But this is integral. You're not going to bring back the city. You're not going to refill these neighborhoods without strong schools, without workable school choices for parents.
Yeah.
All right, so we're up here at the conference, and I really feel that there's this new shift in kind of looking at where Detroit is headed now. How would you compare in years past what the attitude has been and kind of the forward movement from foundations now and working together with government that has been established and with the private sector? Would you say that it's come together, I mean, the most that you've ever seen in the last couple of years?
Ever. Most I've ever seen, ever. And I think the difference now is you're seeing investments that are not pure altruism. Not a shakedown, oh, I got to do this to check a box. You know, people are putting money in because they believe there's a return on that investment. That's a critical difference than what we've seen in past.
What do you think, Stephen?
You know, I think that, you know, the panel that I moderated this morning with Speaker Bolger, and the things that he has said about Detroit and the time he has spent in Detroit, and not just coming and shaking hands with politicians, but going out in neighborhoods and talking to people who live there and seeing what those neighborhoods look like. I can't think of another time that we've had that kind of effort and collaborative effort from the leadership around it.
So the conference mainly, there was so much focus, I think, really on Detroit and positivity than there has been in the last couple of years. I also want to talk a little bit about the focus that there was on education, which I think is critical in the conversations that we're having at the legislature and moving forward, and some of the funding decisions that they're going to have to make, and even talking about you know, Common Core and whatnot. Nolan.
Yeah, we're all over the place still on what education reform should look like. And we shouldn't at this point still be figuring out how to make school work. That they should work. We had a great speech from Joel Klein saying, look, these are not hard things to do. You just need the will to do them. And we know that the auto industry, for example, is creating really good jobs in Michigan that they can't fill. They're having to go outside to fill. You have people talking about, well, we need to have STEM immigrants, and we do need to have STEM immigrants, but we need that because our own schools aren't training our own children to take jobs in the science, technology, engineering, and math fields.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, we're not focused yet as a state on how to fix that stuff. We still fight unbelievably over the smallest incremental kinds of education reforms that other states have blown through and gotten to the tougher stuff. We're still hung up on it, and you know, I don't know how we break that log jam.
But we know we could do better than we're doing.
Well, and I think everyone, the one thing that we all can all agree on is definitely that one. I'm going to talk a little bit about business and the business climate here in the state, and a lot of the conversations that happened here this week, and talking a little bit about entrepreneurship. It was funny. Sandy Barua from the chamber talked about how, you know, failure can't be a bad word. That failure has to be a good word, because when you have people that are going out and trying things and doing things, that we need that kind of innovation and entrepreneurial spirit in Michigan.
And we need to create a structure in this state that supports entrepreneurship. There's still not enough venture capital available in Michigan for people who, you know, want to take the risks you're talking about, and there's still not enough investors willing to say, I'm going to put my money in this. It may fail, it may not, but you know, there's a chance. And you see a lot more venture capital, even in some of our neighbor states, even in Ohio, for example. And we've got universities spinning off some pretty good business ideas and business opportunities.
And things that we should be taking advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you look at what's going on in Detroit, for instance, I think Detroit has become a great laboratory for entrepreneurship on a very small scale, admittedly. You know, you look at the young people who are here trying things, starting businesses, and getting you know, sort of old money, foundation money, and things like that involved in fueling those things. Those are things we got to build on and scale up so that they have more of an effect in the city.
Working on the tax structure to
Right.
make it
No, to make it easier,
to
right?
make it easier and to make the risk less so.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the politics, because you know you can't come to Mackinac Island without a little bit of politics on the unofficial agenda of Mackinac Island. What struck you, Nolan?
Well, I mean, look, you had Mark Schauer here staging some kind of weird protest. He never came up to the Grand Hotel, where, by the way, a year ago he announced his candidacy.
Right, we interviewed him right here on
He
the desk.
holed up at the Chippewa, I guess. It was it like a protest? What the heck was he doing? And expected people to come to him, and nobody did. I mean, he held a fundraiser that he couldn't beg people to come to. I don't know what the point of that was.
Was that your political non-story?
Well,
of
he was
the
caught. He was sort of caught in a weird political sort
the
of
chamber has
storm that he
endorsed
didn't have
the
much
governor.
control of. Right, the chamber endorsed the governor, which I think surprised him. That they did it so early, because doing it before the conference really made him an outsider here. And so how was he supposed to respond to that? If you come to the conference, you look like sort of you know, the disfavored son showing up anyway. If you go and do what he did and hole up somewhere else, you look like sort of a petulant malcontent. So I mean, what was the good play there?
What you can get out of it, you could walk the porch, shake some hands, maybe somebody give you a check.
Well, he also had his own fundraiser, so he was present on the island. Another bit of politics, and that's we're going to continue to hear about for a while, is the water deal with Detroit. And Brooks Patterson was very vocal about, you know, we should maybe kind of transfigure the grand bargain a little bit in the Senate to reflect some changes. And Randy Richardville said, I don't think that we're going to do that right now.
You know, that's been a real undercurrent this whole conference. How do we get Brooks and Hackle to come along on this water deal? The governor and Brooks met privately for the first time yesterday up here to try to get that done. You know, I think they made some progress, but this is very likely to start in bankruptcy and finish outside of bankruptcy.
All right, so what is the biggest takeaway for you, Stephen, with the last minute that we have left?
I think it's grand bargain, right? Senate's got to approve, pensioners got to get in there and move it, and we've got to have this all hold together. Otherwise, we don't get out of bankruptcy in a reasonable amount of time, and there's no solution to that reset that we're looking for.
All right, so that's what you're going to see in the next. That's what we should be concerning ourselves now
Yeah.
with the next couple of weeks. What about you, Nolan? What's the big takeaway, I guess?
The sense of motion. I think that some things were really moving up here. I expect that'll continue when they go back to Lansing and Detroit. I really do think, you know, these people being up here trapped on an island, forced to talk to each other, paid off really well this week.
But it wasn't drudgery, though, being forced to talk to each other on an island, on Mackinac Island, on the porch of the Grand Hotel. All right, well, Stephen Henderson from the Detroit Free Press, Nolan Finley from the Detroit News. We appreciate all of your insight up here on Mackinac Island. And what was your favorite conversation, real quick, that you had with someone? Most interesting conversation you had?
The bourbon
I'm not
party.
going there. That was off the record.
No, it was all off the
Most
record?
interesting time we all had.
Come on, it's just me. Just say it right here into the microphone. All right, well, we'll press you for that at another time. And we'll see you next week on My Week, Thursday nights on Detroit Public Television. And finally tonight, we have loved having the Under the Radar guys with us this trip. They always manage to surprise us with some new finds on the island. So they took a tour of the fort. Not that one, the other one.
Hey, it's Tom from Under the Radar. You know, the policy conference has been great this year. I've met some awesome people, learned some really cool stuff, but you know me, my mind tends to wander. So I wandered off in the woods and found something on Mackinac Island that was totally under my radar.
Fort Holmes sits high above anything else on Mackinac Island. Phil Porter is the director of Mackinac State Historic Parks, and he explained why this place is so special.
You know, I think so many of us know about Fort Mackinac, but Fort Holmes is an absolute treasure.
It sure is, and it's one of the few relics of the War of 1812, which had important chapters in Michigan, and especially here on Mackinac Island.
Now, two quick things. One, the view up here is mind-boggling. I mean, it's breathtaking.
It is, a lot of people come to Mackinac, not everybody gets up to the top of the island, which is truly spectacular. Right now we are looking at the tip of the mitt as we look due south. We can look west and see the Mackinac Bridge. We can look east as far as Lake Huron goes. It is a spectacular view, one of the truly great views in Michigan.
And another thing is the fort is noticeably missing. Where is the original fort?
The fort deteriorated soon after it was built. It wasn't used for very long. What we're looking at today is a reconstruction from the 1930s that has now deteriorated. And thanks to great local support and support through our legislature, we are embarking on the reconstruction of the fort, which will begin later this summer, and we'll dedicate it next year, 200 years after the Americans named it Fort Holmes and finished the construction of it. So we're still doing some fundraising. We're almost there, but it's a very exciting bicentennial project for us.
Well, I'm ashamed I haven't been up here. I've been to this island so many times and I love it here. But this is a real treat to see this.
It is. It's a great treat. It's a great view, and when we have the fort done, it'll even make this a more spectacular place for visitors to the island.
I'll come back.
I'm telling you, with views like this and a great taste of the island's history, you should definitely wander your way up here.
And if you do come up to see the fort, don't worry about getting lost because they left little pieces of fudge in the road so you can find your way back. That's not fudge? Oh boy.
And that is why I love the Under the Radar, guys. That is going to do it for our coverage of the 2014 Mackinac Policy Conference. If you missed anything or you want to see the sessions again and all of the interviews that we did, just go to MiVote.org for everything on demand there for you. A big thanks to our Detroit Public Television crew working hard all week on continuous coverage of this event across the state, the Detroit Regional Chamber, and of course the Grand Hotel for having us right here in their parlor. I'm Christy McDonald. Thanks so much for watching, and good night.